Nam Vishnupadaya Krishna Prashnaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Te Namane Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shanivari Paschatya Satarine Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Srila Bhakti Charu Swami Maharaj Ki Jai. Thank you for giving me this opportunity to glorify Bhakti Charu Swami and also to talk about separation from the spiritual master. When I think of Bhakti Charu Swami, I think of someone who is the personified will of Srila Prabhupada, of someone who cannot think or act independent of the desire of Srila Prabhupada. And that any personal desire would never come in the way of Prabhupada's will for him and Prabhupada's desire for him. Sometimes we have this word, a Prabhupada man. We say, he was a Prabhupada man. When I think of Bhakti Charu Swami, I think he personifies what it means to be a Prabhupada man. In my dealings with him, which mostly were in Mauritius, because I was the temple president, at the time he was GBC, also prior to that, he was visiting there. And what I noticed about him is it almost seemed like he didn't have his own will. Like what he was feeling or what he was thinking about something was always secondary to what Prabhupada would want. And if what he was thinking or feeling was anyway different from what Prabhupada wanted, I could just see that he didn't allow himself to entertain that thought or that idea. If even it ever came up. I'm not saying it was common, but I'm saying if it ever came to a point where, let's say, doing a particular service was extremely difficult or austere, but that service was necessary, I didn't ever see him shy away or kind of lean in any way which I would consider not what Prabhupada would want, not how Prabhupada would think. And so in his words and his actions, I saw basically just Prabhupada's will going through him. And that's what he existed for. And he wanted others to think the same way. As we know, he didn't want himself to be seen ever as anything special, independent of Srila Prabhupada. He never wanted his disciples to ever do anything that would go against Srila Prabhupada, even if he, which he never did, of course, but just to instruct his disciples, said, if I ever leave ISKCON, you don't leave. If I ever do anything against Prabhupada, you don't follow me. Which, of course, wouldn't happen. It didn't happen, but at least it was a principle that he wanted to establish. And I think the most important thing for us, his godbrothers, and especially for disciples, is to not think that this is something that only he does, but think that this is an example that he wanted all of us to follow. Because anyone in that position, when they're acting, they're also conscious that they're setting an example. And so it's not just their own sentiment, but it's also a message to all of us that this is how Prabhupada would want us to act. And I wanted to segue into the topic of separation, because you won't feel separation from your spiritual master when you're living as he wanted you to live, when you're following his instructions, but especially when you're exemplifying his mood, when you understand exactly what it is essentially that he was teaching, what he essentially wanted, the mood especially, the behavior especially, which of course was Prabhupada's mood, that he wanted every one of his disciples to inculcate. When you live that, when you understand it and then you live that, that becomes who you are. You feel very close to your spiritual master because you're doing what he wanted you to do on a very fundamental level and a profound level. You are essentially imbibing the essence of what he wanted to teach. And if you do that, you will not feel separation. You will feel that, oh, he is now with me. He's working through me. I'm always thinking of his example. I am always his energy, his frequency, so to speak, his consciousness, his desire. It's working through me. I feel a oneness with him in that respect. And that way, there's no separation. You're always with him. And I think, at least when I was with Bhakti Charu Swami, I always felt that he was always so conscious of Prabhupada's desire and what Prabhupada wanted. I remember working with him, and something would come up that he would get upset about, and he would say, we never did that with Prabhupada, or Prabhupada never did that, or Prabhupada did it this way. It was so much about exactly how Prabhupada wanted it. So being with him, you got this Prabhupada consciousness, very, very thick, and very, very strong, because that's where his consciousness was. So in the same way, if you as his disciples do that with him, how would Guru Maharaj want this? What did he say about this? What did he teach about this? What would he expect of us? How does he want us to behave in this situation? How does he want to think in this situation? Then how could you not feel close to him? And you know, he gave you so many good instructions. He gave you so much advice, how you should exist within the ISKCON society, how you should see him, how you should see Prabhupada, how you should see him in relation to Prabhupada, how you should see Prabhupada in relationship to you as Prabhupada being your grand spiritual master. He gave you all these things. It's very clear. If you follow that, you will benefit. The people that you teach will benefit. The communities that you're in will benefit, because they'll all be more aligned with Prabhupada. Now, the fear that many of us have, maybe all of us have, is that over time, things will get watered down. The further we go from Prabhupada's appearance in this world, or you could say from his departure, the more there's a chance for things to veer off in one direction or another. And we saw with Bhakti Charu Swami, everything veered in one direction, Prabhupada's direction. And so you as his disciples, you have this responsibility to keep it exactly in line, the way he kept it in line. So that way the next generation will also have that understanding of Prabhupada. Will also understand how to keep everything in line with Srila Prabhupada. So that's a big responsibility that you have, because you didn't have Prabhupada's association, but you had someone's association who had so much of Prabhupada's association, who so much imbibed what Prabhupada taught. And so it's really incumbent upon you. It really becomes your duty to manifest that. I would take that responsibility seriously, because it's a very important one. I know myself, for my disciples, I try as much as I can to help them understand who is Prabhupada, what is his mood, what he taught in different situations, how he applied those teachings in different situations, what was important to him, what was disturbing to him. Because I feel it's so important that they inculcate this, they imbibe this, because it's very easy with successive generations for things to get sidetracked to some degree or another, for people to start thinking, well, that was just what Prabhupada said to his disciples. Situations are different now. Of course, that's there to some degree, but there's so many fundamental principles that can never be changed. So you're so fortunate that you got that. And the more sensitive you are to what you got from your spiritual master in terms of his connection with Prabhupada, in terms of him helping you understand Prabhupada's mood, the more you can preserve that through your own actions, through your own understanding of the philosophy, through your understanding of Prabhupada's desire, his mood, and then you share that, you hand it down to the next generation. You give it to them very strongly, then they hand it down, they get it strongly, their successors, they will give strongly to them, and then it will be handed down. So that's extremely important. Separation is not a bad thing. At the same time, we will never get over the loss of our spiritual master. It's not something you really ever get over. But it's also something that you, in a sense, learn to appreciate, because a vacuum is left when the spiritual master goes. And to remain Krishna conscious and to spread Krishna consciousness, you have to now fill that vacuum, a vacuum you didn't have to fill when he was present, because there was no vacuum to fill. He filled it. So when he leaves an opportunity now for you to step up, as we say in America, to step up to the plate. Well, I guess India also, cricket, step up to the plate. He leaves that opportunity. So, in a sense, it's a blessing, because there are many things and many responsibilities we wouldn't have in the presence of our spiritual master. So, it's a kind of mercy in a sense. That he leaves and gives us that opportunity. When Prabhupada left, we were all wondering, why did he leave so soon? We were all so young. We couldn't understand it. Some of our godbrothers even said, I can't fault Prabhupada in anything except that he left us too soon. They said, why did he do that? It doesn't make sense to us. Why did he do that? But and so many problems ensued after he left. But he left opportunities for us we would have never had. He left opportunities for us to grow in ways we never would. And part of growing is making mistakes. And so we wonder, why did Prabhupada leave? We were so young. We had to make certain mistakes. We did. If we look back at it, it said that someone had to make those mistakes. And because they made those mistakes, future generations are safe. They don't make those mistakes anymore. It's like someone had a so-called volunteer to make those mistakes. And so we grew through our mistakes. We took on more responsibilities. Sometimes we fell on our face. But that's how Prabhupada was teaching us, making that space. So we can also think that way. My Guru Maharaj has done so much. Now, who's going to fill in those footsteps? Of course, we say, well, we can never fit in the shoes of the spiritual master. But at the same time, through his empowerment, we can do so many things. So many things. And Prabhupada used to say, you can do more than I can do. Of course, it's only Prabhupada that's doing it, and we understand that. But he leaves us that opportunity. So now you think of all the things your spiritual master was doing, the things he was thinking of doing, and you start thinking, okay, how can we do those things? How can we take the mission, the vision that he had, that he could not execute, and execute it for him? So in that way, the separation from the spiritual master leaves huge opportunities for the disciple. Now, one time Prabhupada said separation is better. And a lot of us, when we heard that, we kind of felt it like a knife in our heart. Almost like an insensitive statement. Like, how could you say that? Separation is better. That feels like you don't understand our pain. But what Prabhupada meant is that in separation, there's more closeness. I think all of us have become closer to Prabhupada than ever. I think all of us think of Prabhupada more than ever after he left than when he was present. Because, in a sense, when the person's present, you take it for granted because they're there and they can solve your problems. And they will do this and they will do that. And they will make sure everything goes on. But then, when they're not there, you have to do it. And you have to pray to them. And you have to think, how would they do it? What would they say? What did they say? How do we understand what they said? So all these things help you come closer. And of course you feel the pain of that separation, so you're thinking of them more intensely. I think of Prabhupada much more now since he left than I did when he was present, because I was forced to be more Krishna conscious in his absence, because there was nobody there now to solve the problems that he solved, to answer the questions that he answered. And so now we strain our brains to understand what Prabhupada wanted. We study his books more deeply. We try to set better examples, because we now have to be the example. He was the example. Now it has fallen on our shoulders. So that way, there's a more intense meditation. There's a closeness. And the way we understand that is we have to acknowledge that the presence of the Guru is not material. Otherwise it won't make sense. We'll want that material association. The presence is not material. So the inspiration from the Guru can come to anyone at any time, in any place, because it's not material. It's not three-dimensional. And so that guidance, that inspiration, Prabhupada talked about it, that he got that from his spiritual master, that it's always there. It's there in the order. It's contained in the order. It's not limited by the lack of physical presence. It's not limited by time, space, or anything. And so that's the fundamental principle with which we understand that separation is better, because it brings us closer. So I would encourage you, as I said in the beginning, to really enter the heart of Bhakti Charu Swami. Represent that through your actions, through your words, through your thinking. Share that with others and fulfill his desires and mission, which both means his personal mission and Prabhupada's mission, which was so dear to him, and he wanted it to be so dear to you. And then you'll always feel very close, and even closer than when he was not physically present. From when he was physically present. Thank you for listening. I hope that helped you. Hare Krishna.